I'm going to summarize what to me are the key points in this paper. And then if we have time, I'll relate it to the other things because I think it's important that we be aware simultaneously. That's why I love talking with this group is the level of intellect and emotional maturity in this group allows for the ability in most cases to hold differing, even conflicting ideas in our heads at the same time without having to discard either one of them prematurely. So I think it's true that Trump and Musk are literally, in a sense, saving humanity. They're saving free speech. They're saving America. They're saving integrity in a lot of ways. And at the same time, Musk is one of the leading technocrats, and Trump is pouring a lot of power and a lot of money into the agendas of the Larry Ellisons and Sam Altmans and SoftBanks and so forth, who are creating these big AI things and mRNA projects and so forth. So, okay, here's from this is the Dark Enlightenment. First point is that I'm going to be very general here and just hit the highlights. In general, the technocrats believe that there are technical solutions to every problem. And let that sink in, not just most problems, every problem. So that can conflict with human evolution and conflict with spiritually aware people because ultimately the technical solution is you replace human biology and human spirituality with computers. But I get ahead of myself. Number two, no nation states. Now, you've heard me say that a lot. I'm a big fan of no nation states, but I'm not a big fan of global technocracy. The technocrats want to get rid of nation states so that they can even further centralize power on a continental first scale and then on a global scale. Third is that there will be a resource-based allocation of energy, power, food, etc. And it will be allocated by the rulers of this technate according to their what they call peck rights. I used to have a ranch and I had chickens, and the pecking order is very clear amongst any flock. Who gets priority on the food, and basically the technocrats have the same thing in their sort of their Silicon Valley religion. These are sort of the dogmatic points in their religion. Next one is that Marxian communism, the sort of Chinese communist Agenda 21 totalitarian state that we're all fighting against right now as being far left, to the technocrats is so far right as to be bourgeois. There's a lot of stunners in this paper. That was a quote from someone named Howard Scott, who's one of the major technocrats. So, what does that mean? Well, Dark Enlightenment is based on the efficient management of what they call functional sequences. This involves the deconstruction of power as it is now and then the redistribution of power. People in favor of this call themselves neo-reactionaries. They've got a whole new vocabulary even. They're neo-reactionaries. Those in the technical realm actually are creating hundreds of startups every year called accelerators. People like Eric Schmidt, Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, these folks are creating these accelerators. And you put those two together and they call themselves accelerationist neo-reactionaries. And they are centralizing power into what they call the cathedral. And the cathedral is not a place. It's their ideology. It's the dominant progressive ideology that is coming out of Silicon Valley that is beyond communism, socialism, fascism, democracy. It's beyond all of that. And it's the dominant progressive ideology that's exercising a controlling influence over the state. And that's their idea of the future. Well, what will we have instead of nation states? We'll have what they call SOV corps, SOV corps, sovereign corporations. And the CEOs of these corporations will be dictators for their regions of the world. Their regions of the world will be very convenient technates. I'm pausing for a minute to bring up something else to show you. Okay, if you can see that, make it a little bigger here. This is the administration chart for the North American Technate.
Oh, we're not seeing your screen,
Oh,
Foster.
sorry.
Yep.
A Radical Plan for Political Systems, the administration chart of the North American Technate. So you have a director here, you've got the board of directors. Under that, you've got armed forces, continental research, social relations, that means social control. You got foreign relations, that's relations amongst the different technates. And then you've got your industrial functions. These are the sequential functions, industrial functions, service functions, and then it just breaks down into these subunits. So when I saw that, that reminded me of that. Do you remember from Thrive 1 when I warned people that the one world government people are separating the world by continents and creating, they've already done the European Union. They're pretty far along on the African Union. They're pretty far along on the Pacific Union, and they have strong intentions for the American Union. Here's another graphic that I did of that. Underneath here, we the people will be under, I called it nation states and regions. They're dropping nation states. They're just calling them technates under these categories, continental categories. So as all this came out, one of the things that started ringing my bell was, okay, Trump is going after Canada, Greenland, Panama, some states in northern South America. So that sounds an awful lot like his job is to complete the North American Union or complete the American Union. So just stick that in your mind and let me continue with the other points and we'll come back to that at the end. Okay, more on the fundamental principles of their dogma. It is anti-libertarian, it is anti-individual sovereignty, and it's summed up at the end of part 1 of this paper as the accelerationist neo-reactionary solution to humanity is, drum roll please, end humanity. Okay, let me go on to part 2. There will be prosperity zones. Now, this is already happening in some parts of China. Trump is already promoting having it happen in the US. I'm not necessarily against having prosperity zones, depending on what they mean. If they're free of government intervention for corporations and for economics, but they hold to the non-aggression principle and take care of the environment, hey, that's a great way to start locally, and then we'll expand them across the world. No, that's not what they're talking. They're talking about a corporate monarchy, and they're just talking about starting in some, various zones that they'll call prosperity zones. Now, get this. What about for all the people who don't want to participate in this? This is where Mark Zuckerberg comes in. Meta. The alternative, because they're not going to admit to genocide. That's Bill Gates and George Soros. They're in charge of that. But the technocrats, they're not going to admit to genocide. So they've got to find something to do with all these useless eaters who will be unemployed, maybe getting a little universal basic income to buy them off, but can't contribute and they don't want them to get in the way. So what are you going to do with them? Virtual reality alternative to genocide. So you create Meta, the useless people start living their lives as much as possible in a virtual world of solitary confinement. Moving on to the next one. I know any one of these we could talk about for hours. The next one is that the total information awareness that I fought back against with Thrive 1, it eventually disappeared because people caught on to that it was the surveillance system that Ed Snowden eventually revealed. It got canceled, but it's reemerging as Palantir under technocrat CEO Alex Karp, who's a major player along with the rest of them here. Moving along, stable coins. Since the CBDC, even Trump has come out against the CBDC, but do the technocrats, are they shaping things to use stablecoins as the global controlled digital currency. Well, they describe quite well in this paper how 92% of money worldwide is already digital. There's very little cash left anyway. So that digital currency, with the Fed and SWIFT system and banking system and all of that, it's already being monitored. It's being tracked. They're flagging suspicious transactions. They won't allow more than certain deposits. You can't take more than a certain amount across boundaries. They can stop you from spending, from traveling. And it starts to get into what David Webb laid out in The Great Taking, that all of your assets now that are in banks or brokerage houses or whatever, they are already technically owned by the banks. You invested, it turned out, in the banks. And if they default, or any of their intermediaries default, and the bank goes into bankruptcy, guess what? You have no recourse. You're at the very end of the line for any bankruptcy disbursement of funds, because they changed the rules, and this is worldwide through the globalist banking system, that when you deposit in most banks, you are investing in the bank as opposed to having any security about actually getting your investment back on demand. So in Canada, if any of you are hopeful, as I was, I know there are many Canadians in this network. I started to get hopeful when I saw them getting rid of Justin Trudeau. Well, listen, he was kindergarten compared to the guy that they brought in. He was just kind of the hippie crossover guy. Now they brought in Mark Carney, who is a Marxist technocrat. He's a globalist puppet. He's part of the World Economic Forum. He was on the board of the World Economic Forum. He came up in the Trilateral Commission, and he was chairman of the Bank of England, then the Bank of Canada. He's a complete Agenda 21 climate tyrant, and now he's the head of Canada. So this is going to be interesting trying to deal with him. Unless he and Trump are working out a deal where, okay, we'll make the Canada the 51st state if you make it part of the one world government, one world technocratic tyranny. Okay, so we're winding down on time. That's my summary of that particular paper.